So your knowledge of his OSS.
Well, his experience, first of all, when he says he escaped from Austria, it was a rather it was a lot more interesting than came out. But he first Hitler, the soldiers all marched into the classrooms, and he was in gymnasium, which is kind of like a high school, and they dismissed the class, and the professor, the teacher, was a Jewish man. And there were a number of Jews in the class, and when they all disappeared. 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, when classes resumed, the teacher was gone, and and so my dad always felt badly because he had been mischievous, and he'd been dropping sodium in the inkwells and causing poofs of smoke, and so he had this guilt feeling that he had not been kind to this man, and now he was gone, and so anyway, then my dad went down to Bulgaria, Sofia, when my mother had this coffee shop, and he had been told by his father, who had left the family and married somebody back in the United States and was living in Chicago, and basically had abandoned the family. But he had told my dad that he needed to get out of the United States, get out of Europe, because it was not looking good, and he was going to be drafted into Hitler's army, and which indeed, as soon as Hitler invaded Austria, that's where he was supposed to go, is into Hitler's army. And so Dad went to the American consulate and spoke to a man by the name of Cannonbish Cannon. And do you remember that?
Wonderful man.
And asked him to.
My life.
Yeah. But he first said, no, I can't give it to you unless you get an exit visa from Austria. And so Dad then had to go back to the Austrian, I guess, consulate. I'm not sure where it was that you went. And the young Austrian who was stamping visas looked at him and said, where do you want to go? And he said, well, Dad couldn't say he wanted to go to the United States because he wouldn't let him. So he said, well, I want to go to Italy, I want to go to Czechoslovakia, and he started rattling off all these European countries that were controlled by Hitler. And so he said the young Austrian just looked at him right in the eyes, and then said, that's too much work, and he stamped him with a world visa. And so he doesn't know if this young man was knowing what he wanted to do or just lazy. But
that's much too complicated.
World visa.
Yeah.
And so then Dad
That's Austrian.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. That was a joke.
That they were lazy?
Yeah.
Well, so then Dad took that back to Cannonbish Cannon, and Cannonbish Cannon then said, well, I can't let you out. And you said, but you promised. And so then he gave him an exit visa. So he then needed money, and he went to this coffee shop in Sofia, and there was a Jewish man who was a customer, and he was a big fat man, and he heard my dad that he needed money, and he pulled out a wallet, a big wad of money, and he peeled off $10 and he gave it to my dad, and that was what he used to pay his expenses to get back to the United States.